turn these on. There we go, so everybody can hear us in the back. David, we doing okay? All right. All right. It's always good to have someone in the back go like this if they can't hear. So thank you so much for being here again today. Tell us a little bit about, the event that you did here this morning with the students.
Should I do this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do that.
Hi. Well, mainly it melted my heart completely, seeing all of their sweet faces and their interest in writing. I just think that's so awesome. This whole place is just magical to me, and I would have loved to have this growing up. And so seeing them sitting here, asking questions about the writing process, the themes of the book, it was truly special.
Yeah. So they
High school.
High school. Yeah. So they had some tough questions. So you guys have got a high bar tonight. So first, the exhibit that we have in the program series that we have is, it's about immigrant and refugee writers. So tell us a little bit about your background and how your family came to America.
Yeah. So my parents came. They came separately, and they met over here, but they're both from Bolivia. My father grew up in the Amazon, literally born there, and he was living in a village that was inaccessible by road, and so to go anywhere, he had to go by river in a canoe that he built himself. And he desperately wanted to be a doctor. And so he eventually studied medicine in Bolivia and wanted to finish his education here, and literally did not know anything about the United States, did not speak the language, closed his eyes over a map of the United States, and his finger landed on Detroit. So he came here, saw snow for the very first time, and learned how to speak English through Sesame Street.
That's amazing.
It is, yeah. And then my mom, her parents were in the position to be able to send her to school here, so she actually went to Georgetown, and they met in Miami through, I guess they were set up. So, and that's what happened, and they're here.
And did he become a doctor?
And he became a doctor. He just retired after 42 years. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
How did that influence of, hearing that kind of magical origin story?
Yeah.
How did that influence help you to become a writer and a storyteller?
Yeah. My parents were always hard workers. My father would work all day, and then we'd be having dinner, and he'd get called back to the hospital. And so both of them exhibited a tremendous work ethic that I absolutely admired. They were both ambitious and supportive of each other. My mom, she worked in my father's practice, and she's the most organized person ever. She really could run a country. So she ran that office and kept him completely above board. But so together, I saw them working and just thriving in this country. And I loved their ambition. I loved their drive. And my father, because of where he grew up, I'm not sure, but he's always been deeply romantic, kind of like this philosopher, and he just loved the arts. And so he never wanted either of his children to pursue medicine. He just wanted us to pursue whatever our passion was. And so that was fostered, and I really was encouraged and very supported for pursuing a writing career. Yeah.
What were some of the books that you loved to read growing up?
I was a voracious reader. I just remember as a young kid just reading whatever was in the house and then begging my mom to take me to the bookstore. And really, my first language was Spanish. And then I went to school, and little by little, I perfected Spanglish. So I speak Spanish, but really I'm fluent in Spanglish. So, and I grew up reading a variety of things, but I remember falling in love with Agatha Christie, and I read through her entire collection when I was 11, I think.
That's some heavy reading for an 11-year-old.
Was it? That's what I wanted her biography for my 11th birthday, and my sweet mother went to Barnes & Noble and picked it up for me. So I read a lot of things. When I was 14, I started reading Harry Potter, and that was, a truly magical experience. And I grew up with the books, and the Chronicles of Narnia, for sure, absolutely. C.S. Lewis was, So I think the point was, though, that I had an appetite for all kinds of story. I loved story. I loved the adventure. I loved the characters and where they started and then where they ended up. So I just read a lot.
You actually went to art and illustration before you came to writing.
I studied creative writing first, and I really, you go through creative writing and you think, I'm going to be this amazing writer, and it didn't work out. That's fine. And so I was trying to pursue or think of what else I could do, and I went back to school for illustration and design. I was thinking I was going to be a children's book illustrator, but I somehow fell into designing greeting cards, which was a better fit. So I spent a few years doing greeting cards, and then realized that bug never left me. And I got married. We went on a honeymoon to Jamaica, and I thought of this really cool Latina pirate story and fell back into writing. So that's how the journey happened.
Yeah. So this particular book, did that start out as that pirate story?
No.
Okay.
Oh no. That pirate story should never see the light of day.
Quite a lot.
Oh yeah. Yeah, completely. No, that pirate story, I actually have a fondness for it. It's absolute rubbish. Should never see the light of day. But it was a practice book. It got my feet wet. I got reacquainted with the process and joy of writing a story, the love-hate relationship. So I got it out of my system, and then I sat down for real and thought, what do I really want to write? And it wasn't a Latina pirate story. I wanted to write about Bolivia. I wanted to write about my upbringing and my culture and the foods that I was eating and the language I was speaking. So this felt truer.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about this particular story and what it means to you.
Oh, man. I love this story because my brother and I were the only ones that were born here, and everyone else is in Bolivia. I have something like 27 first cousins, and for a few years, longer than a few years, there's just been a lot of political upheaval in the country, a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty on what's going to happen for Bolivia's future. And Bolivia has this long history, kind of tragic, of oppression and colonialism and being conquered. And so I was very much inspired by its history, and then kind of telling a story that ran parallel to what's going on right now in Bolivia, especially because it was impacting my family. And I've had family members who have gone onto the streets in Bolivia protesting and wanting a better future. And so being here and not being able to be there, I wanted to write my own kind of protest, my own kind of rebellion. And so I started thinking about a character who could really carry that kind of story. And I picked someone that I felt that had the most change, that could inspire change and also exhibit an internal change. That's what was interesting to me. And so the story is about a decoy condesa, which is Spanish for countess, and she infiltrates this corrupt government, and she sends coded messages back to the rebels through her weaving, which is magical. So I very much wanted to make sure that this story was telling and describing and alluding to some of the events that have happened in Bolivia, but also highlighting its very tragic history.
Yeah. How did you balance the real and the fictional?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I took what was real, I took events that were happening, and I fit them into this fantasy world that heavily inspired by Bolivia, and I kind of, I wanted to amplify them and to kind of dress them in a fantastical way. So there are events that happen, there are plot points that happen in Woven in Moonlight that have happened in Bolivia, but set in this world, I was able to twist it and make it a little bit magical, and balancing that, I felt like I was telling a story that could read like a fairy tale, but it's grim, and there are some real life consequences to it. And so no matter how pretty I made it, I made sure that I was also talking about the real stuff, the stuff that's hard and doesn't end in a pretty bow.
Yeah. There are 3 languages in the book.
Yes.
And so how do you write in English and in Spanish, or how does your work in those multiple languages affect the writing?
So, so for my first language, Spanish, it was very auditory. I never sat down and studied Spanish. But I can understand everything that my parents, my family, everybody was saying, and I speak it, but I've never written in it. And so whenever I was writing the story, I wrote it in English, but I also realized that these characters, I didn't want them to speak 100% English. I wanted them to sound like me. And so I gave them, this ability to talk in Spanglish. And so there's a lot of things that I chose because it reflected me personally and my upbringing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are there things that you found yourself more at ease conveying in Spanish versus English?
Yes, the food.
Let's talk about the food for a minute, because I've never been so hungry reading a book in my entire life. I got to the end, like you said, this morning when I said, I finished the book, and you said, did you immediately Google some Bolivian restaurants? Because the food, the descriptions of food in this book are just luscious. And so were you hungry all the time?
Yeah, I was hungry. I was so hungry. I was craving all the foods that I wanted to eat. I grew up eating. So I just thought, as a reader growing up, I never saw any of the foods that I grew up eating. I so desperately wanted to talk about how great Bolivian food is, because it's very rare that you find a Bolivian restaurant over here. So, I needed to include it. But more than that, when I was creating this world, I felt like the easiest way to and you get to experience the country from a plate. So I felt like that was the easiest, fastest way to immerse a reader into this world, was talking about the food. And it mattered so much to me that I begged my editor to include a food glossary at the back. So there are 4 pages. You're welcome.
No recipes, though.
No recipes, but maybe, in the second book, maybe.
Well, you talked a little bit about, that was one of the ways that you made your characters feel real.
Yes.
Was that, they're always hungry.
Yes. I always get concerned in books when the characters don't stop to eat something. I never understood why I wasn't reading about what they were eating. And I also felt very concerned. I'm like, please sit down and have a snack, because you've been fighting all day. You must be so tired.
Yeah. Yeah. There should have been many, many, many more lunch breaks in The Lord of the Rings.
Yes. Everybody remembers that point when the hobbits are talking about Elevensie and everybody remembers that, because it was like, I relate to that. Yes, I want several meals in a day.
Yeah. Everyone's hungry by 11 o'clock, no matter where you're from.
It's so true.
Yeah. Why is it important to, for people to be able to see themselves in stories?
Oh, man. I think everybody wants to see themselves as a hero, and at least for me, I felt like, man, if I'm writing this story, someone else might read it with a similar upbringing, or at least a culture they can connect to because it's adjacent, and think, man, I feel so seen. There is something really neat about being able to read a story and connect and be able to say, man, me too. I really wanted that, because that's how you make friends too. You connect over common interests. You connect over things that, you love this, or you grew up saying this, or you grew up eating this, me too. And there's this bond. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to bond with a story. Yeah.
Were there books that, either, things that you read here, you mentioned some, but were there books when you were in Bolivia, when you were visiting, were there books there that you connected with?
So, sorry, I have to cough. I'm a little bit sick. Thank you. That's so nice. Yes. Yeah.
I missed how your dad learned English.
Through Sesame Street.
Oh, yeah.
way so many people did.
Is that true?
Yeah,
I guess.
Oh yeah, TV and
thank you.
a lot of children's TV winds up being almost an ESL class.
And I don't remember watching Sesame Street.
Yeah.
Did you watch Sesame Street?
Oh yeah, obsessively.
Oh, yeah? Everybody else did?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the cough drop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
So, books that you might have read or stories that you heard when you were in Bolivia.
I heard a lot of stories. I didn't read a lot of books. I don't have memories of ever visiting a library or a bookstore, and I don't know if it's because there isn't a long tradition of really relishing in a novel or story. I don't remember, but I do remember hearing a lot of stories and hearing how, my father would tell a particular legend that he would hear growing up where he did. And so there was a lot that I heard auditory, but I didn't read a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was more of an oral tradition.
More of an oral tradition. Yeah.
Yeah. There's such a longing for home in this book. The Dikai Condesa she's trying to square her own desires with her desires for her people and for her friends and her family. And was some of that, your own experience in moving back and forth between Bolivia and America?
Yeah. So I grew up, since I was a baby all the way until I was 18, my parents would ship my brother and I to Bolivia for 3 months out of the year. Literally, school would end, and that same day I would be on a flight and I would be gone in Bolivia. And so I my summers were spent there. And it was interesting. I felt like I became a different Isabel almost. In the States, I would want to fit in and belong and talk about Britney Spears or whatever people were watching in pop culture. And then I would leave and it would be completely a different world. And so home sort of felt like two places, and I had to balance both of them. I didn't really, those two identities, like Isabel in Bolivia and then Isabel in the States, they didn't really converge until much later, until I accepted kind of both halves and just accepted. I'm the daughter of immigrants, and I am American, but I am also Bolivian, and I think that's when I realized that a part of the journey is accepting those two halves and just, this is who I am. Yeah.
Where are the places, or maybe it's people, who make you feel most at home now?
Oh, always going home to the house that I grew up in, that always makes me feel like home. My grandparents in Bolivia, they have this apartment in El Prado. That also feels like home. I know that apartment every square inch, and then I also know to take down the elevator and cross the street, and you'll get some delicious salteñas. So there are comforts and things that I associate with home and sense, but it's also the people, So I think that's people make a home to me, and I always just have a sense of security when I'm around them.
Yeah. So when you were writing this book, were you concerned about how it would be received by your Bolivian community, your Bolivian family?
Yes and no. At times I did, because to my knowledge, and someone can correct me with Google, but to my knowledge, I don't know if there is any other young adult Bolivian fantasy out there. And that feels like a lot of pressure to get it right. So sure, I think that I did off and on. But the other thing too is that this is my experience and my story, and that's okay. I don't have to answer every question. I don't have to tell every story. I'm sitting here and I'm only telling this angle, this experience. This was me, and it's valid and valuable, and that's okay. So when I did start to feel pressure, that's what I would tell myself, because every story matters and there's room for all of them.
How have they responded to the book?
So it's going to be translated into Spanish at some point. So I'm hoping that I'm hoping that people in Bolivia will have access to it for sure. I have cousins who speak English, and they're currently reading it, and they've all just been so excited, and they've been talking about it, of course. And then, there is this really sweet moment when they're reading the book and they reach out to me and they're like, oh, you're talking about salteñas, which is a kind of Bolivian empanada that's so delicious. Oh, somebody knows. Okay.
You're making us all hungry here tonight. We should have ordered in.
You're right. We really should have. They're so delicious. Yeah. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Was there a passage from the book that you'd like to read?
Oh, I don't know if I can read it, but I would love for you to read it.
Oh, gosh. Okay. We did this morning so that we could preserve Isabel's voice for some of her other events as well. And I said, it's very nerve-wracking reading someone else's words.
She did such a good job.
In front of
And you
them.
all are going to love it. Hopefully. I don't want to presume.
It's entirely due to the words. So, all right.
Yeah, there's this section in the book. So the main character, she is this decoy, and so she's been trained to protect herself and to protect her condesa. But I also gave her this ability to weave, which is such a beautiful Bolivian tradition. And one of my favorite passages from the book is when she sits down, she's sitting in front of the loom, and she's by herself. She can be just herself, and she is being able to be completely free from this duty that's weighing on her shoulders.
The loom sits near an arched window, close enough to bathe in Luna's moonlight, but not close enough for the heights to make me queasy. The room is far removed from everyone else, making it easier to weave without any distraction. My fingers twitch. I want to weave. No, I need to. With my heart thudding, I grab a bundle of the snow-white wool and tie knots on the top and bottom pegs. Once the loom is properly warped, I gather more wool. I start at the top, threading the strands over and under to create diamond-shaped lights peppering the evening sky. As I work, moonlight glints around me, growing brighter, as if peering over my shoulder to watch me work. My fingers blur as I move from left to right and back again. When I finish dotting the tapestry with twinkly lights, it's ready for my magic thread, the one only I can make. The one made of moonlight. My fingers tingle and I reach for a ray of silver light. Feel it glide over my hand like putting an arm through a sleeve. The moonlight slants, turning supple and smooth, bending and twisting as it lengthens. My breath catches. No matter how many times I use Luna's rays to make thread, it always manages to surprise me. The shimmer of magic courses through me, delighting the fabric of my soul. I work the incandescent thread over and under again, building a scene of the night sky. The moonlight turns to moondust as I weave, fluttering to the stone floor like falling snowflakes. In what feels like minutes, a new tapestry winks back at me, a glittering silver work of art that lights up the small room. Pools of moondust gather at my feet as if I've wandered into winter. My neck and shoulders stiffen, a telltale sign that I've once again lost track of time. The pain is worth it. While I weave, life's troubles melt away. Worry about Anna, our lack of food, and the infernal Yaxans. I pick up the strand to finish the bottom row.
You did such a great job. See, didn't you do a great job?
They're wonderful words. They're wonderful words.
Thank you.
So we can turn it over to our audience here for some questions, if you guys have some.
Yeah. Yeah, so young adult is typically teen, but more than that, it speaks to what the character is experiencing. So young adult would follow a story about a teen who is experiencing the world for the first time. They're unsure of their voice. They're still learning who they are. They're getting into scrapes. They don't have all the answers. So the theme of young adult is kind of this coming of age story, and that's what would make it young adult. That's a really interesting question. I decided to write it as a young adult because I remember being a teenager and wrestling through all those questions, and they felt very big and important, and I have never really forgotten the experience. And so when I sat down to write the story, I've just always had that kind of fascination and tension between being at home and having the answers provided for you, and then going out into the world and being tested for the first time. And I've always loved fantasy. So yes, going to Bolivia literally felt like I was going into another world and language and food. But I've always loved the fantastic. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, those are great questions. I can't personally speak because I don't actually know. I don't know if there's been a lot of literature surrounding the people who have come to volunteer in the country. And as for the literature around the Civil War and the Chaco War, yeah, I don't actually know. Those are great questions. No. So when I was doing the greeting cards, I owned a company, and after 6 years, I decided that I did not want to do this anymore, so I sold it, and I have an incredibly supportive husband. And after I sold the company, I was able to write it full time, and it took me about 3 months, but it was my routine. I'm very nocturnal, and I come alive at night, and I'm very, very creative at night. And so I would stay up until about 4 or 5 in the morning writing this story. My husband gets up at 5, so sometimes I would still be up, and he'd be like, "Oh, you have not gone to bed." It's true. Yeah.
So you wove it from Moonlight.
Yes, clearly. You think I'm a writer, but really? Yes. You know, there has been such a resurgence and yearning for diverse voices. I don't know. I really couldn't tell you if Woven in Moonlight would have been published 15 years ago. But right now, there has just been let's find these voices. I want to hear authentic experiences that have been inspired by these stories. And so my publisher has been incredibly supportive. This book is literally Bolivian inside and out, even down to the cover. And this is something that just happened, but it's really cool. There is no real, authors don't have a lot of say in their cover, but my editor reached out to me and she asked me, "Hey, I want to hire a Bolivian artist for this cover." And I was like, wow, that's cool because I'm an artist and I'm Bolivian. Can I do it? And she let me do it. And it was just unheard of. And so I was able to design the cover, and I had complete control. They had so much trust in me, so much. And I mean, the acceptance and the support and encouragement I've seen has been really, really encouraging moving forward, because this story has been just championed by my publisher, and it's been incredible, really. Yeah, so it was bought by a Spanish publisher, and so they're going to be doing the translation. I have not seen it yet, but I'll be very curious to see how they handle the nuances of the language. I'm hoping that they'll do it, correctly and with enthusiasm, but that is something definitely that I'll be reading myself when I do get it. Yeah. Hopefully soon. I'm dying. I really want it in Spanish.
Is it ready yet? Is it ready?
Is it ready? Is it ready? Yeah. It's very important. Growing up, access to that kind of water was very, very limited. And, I didn't grow up in Bolivia, but my parents did, and my cousins are still there, and tios and primos. And for sure, having that access would, enhance a lot of their everyday lives. But I don't know if it will ever happen. I think that Evo, the current president, not sort of, I think that he went back to see that if he could get part of that land back, and he was denied. So
you touch on the conflict over water and resources a little bit in the book.
Yes,
that's
I did.
Part of the
tension.
issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to Bolivia and seeing the difference from the States to Bolivia. There's no public drinking fountains. It's not a thing. And you boil everything that you drink. You don't consume any of the ice cubes. So it's different. And so I definitely was around that growing up. And there were a lot of things that happened in Woven in Moonlight that were intentional, but some of it was pulled, I think, from memory, subconscious, and I didn't realize the importance of it or the impact until I was in revisions and thought, oh my gosh, I remembered this as a kid, and here it is in this story. So, yeah.
Anyone else have any questions?
Y'all have been great.
Been very, yeah. What are you working on?
And so this companion, this story is really about this character and their journey, and it takes place in a jungle inspired by the Amazon. So I've had many conversations with my father about this setting. The stories that he tells and what he ate were truly fascinating and, weird. But so that story, written in Starlight, it's going to be winter 2021, and it follows the events of Woven in Moonlight by 1 week. So, yeah.
A sequel.
Yeah, it's a companion, so you can read them out of order, but I really would prefer that you not do that. I think that you. I don't mean to tell you what to do, but I'm right.
Who are some of the other young writers that are working today? We mentioned at the beginning of this your role as a mentor for other writers, and so who are some of the other writers that you admire that you're reading?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. Like Nocturna. There's Zoraida Cordova. She's writing wonderful things. She's from Ecuador, so her books have been fabulous. Telur Mejia is another one. We Set the Dark on Fire, absolutely beautiful. So there has been, Jen Cervantes is another one. She's been writing middle grade, really, really great. I've been seeing so many Latinas in publishing, and there's so few of us, but that's been amazing. Just amazing being able to see this just rise of this characters,
I feel like every time we do one of these, everybody's Goodreads queue just gets a little bit longer, which is a good thing. That's what we're here for.
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely. More books.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Isabel, for being here tonight. And as I said at the beginning of this, if you don't have a book yet, you can pick up a copy at the back, and Isabel will sign it for you. Oh. And we also have copies of the maps of
Woven in Moonlight.
Woven in Moonlight, but of the territory mentioned in the book.
Yes. It's a map that I did for the interior of the book. And so the map that's over there, I actually colored it. So, yeah.
Well, thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. Y'all were wonderful.